So this is a little tricky because Ronald's a lot taller than me, and I've set up the mic so that he can use it. So I'm just going to have to use my grown-up loud person voice. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Excellent. Proud of myself. How about back in there? Maybe, maybe. Yay. All right. So my name is Rosie. I'm the events coordinator here at Readers Books. There are some chairs up here if you guys want to be comfy. There's more back in there. We're all happy. Before we really get going, some housekeeping notes. If you have anything that makes noise, anything electronic, a watch, a phone, a beeper, anything like that, if you can make sure it's nothing to ring through the evening, that would be really great and appreciate it. Since you guys have the wine cups, there's a trash can on the counter if you want to give it to us there, and there's also a trash can where the wine is served. So those are really parts. The last thing that's kind of boring that I'll mention is that Ronald will be signing the books after he talks. And he's going to be at that wooden table that his books were on. So the trick is always getting him from up here to over there without too many congratulatory moments. You know, if you have one for each step, it takes a while. So the way we solve this is you can buy the book in between here and there, then leave them over there. So I think one of the things about the world as it is now is that it is hard to decide what we're going to talk to our children about. We have to figure out a way to say there are hard things in the world, there are bad things in the world, but that doesn't mean that you can't figure them out. It doesn't mean that you can't solve the puzzle. It doesn't mean that you can't go on the quest to solve the curse. And when Ronald told me about his book and the origin of his book, it just sort of settled in as a lovely moment of how do we tell stories to the children around us. The idea of telling these Arthurian myths throughout time while driving and having an own quest of their own. This beautiful combination in life. And obviously Ronald's going to have a little bit more information about the story and about how that really grew than I will. So if you can give him a great big round of applause. Oh, I'm so sorry. It's his birthday. To you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Ronald. Happy birthday to you.
You guys sound really good. It's good. And Rosie's introduction was very, very good, and everything readers, when they put this stuff up and put them together the posters, they're really well done. Okay, first a couple introductions. One is for the person who started editing the very first draft and helped me. He really was a co-creator in the early days, but he's in Norway, so he can't be here. Ronald Jones. And number two, Court Sinus, who just walked in? No. Okay. Number three, David Naw, or David. See, there he is, that's the illustrator, artist, dancer, civil engineer in Sonoma County. He did pictures that are beautiful and helpful in the text of the book. Number three, Ronald Jones, who drew the Ink Orchard logo, which I did not acknowledge in the book because that would imply that it's only really associated with this book rather than a really big publishing corporation. Bob Eisenberg in France, who did the cover, illustrator and muralist. Sandra Lee. There, okay, right there, in the back, by Joe, who was very much the underpinnings of this process in that for 53 years, we've been through thick and thin, and in the last 7 years, I've provided a lot of thin, and she's stepped up, so. Okay, a brief note on me. I was a creative writing major. In college, I always loved to write. I loved to edit. I loved editing. And when I became a pretty busy field trip and carpool driver in a private school for my children and children of my friends, and here, I told stories to keep everybody interested, and they were. They loved it. So I took those stories, and at a certain point long after I was driving the carpools, converted them into a single unified novel, and kept most of the adventures. It's a series of adventures, especially the first half of the book, and very similar to the way they were first told. But I did tie it together and add themes and values and continuity and new characters and stuff like that. That's about it. It did make a very long book for a quest adventure, because quests tend to draw younger grades, and it's just really long for that. That's okay though. I'm immensely pleased that I did it. It's just great. And this is and this is a great culmination. There have been several culminations. Getting it in my hands as a real object, but this is wonderful. And I thought, I talked to Sandy on the way here about what's the best and the worst that could happen. And I said, you know, what I hope is that people have a nice time. And in the sense of that, Rosie said, people get pretty restive after listening to a reading for 20 minutes, which was good for me, because I was going to go on for about 40. Okay. This is the very first chapter, just to give you, it's not the most exciting chapter or anything like that, but it gives you an introduction to the two main characters, Prince Bryan, who is going to be the next king of the Kingdom of Partrain, and Dreya, his best friend, who's going to be the next high priestess. And this kingdom has always been run jointly by a king and a high priestess, which seems like a good partnership, but in fact it always falls apart and they become locked in bitter power struggles. Prince Bryan and Dreya swear it won't happen with them. Okay. First half of the book is called The Quest to the Ancient of Ancients. The book is cut in half, and it'll make sense when you read it. Chapter 1, The Goddess of Dandrel's Pool. Pool, that was. Prince Bryan crept barefoot through the dark castle. When he saw his father's room, he slowed to a crawl and held his breath. Light spilled out beneath the thick wooden door. He pictured his father hunched over his writing table, muttering angrily. Any noise would bring him storming through the door. Prince Bryan loved his father, but like everyone else in the kingdom, he was afraid of him. If he had just ignored Dreya's note, he would still be asleep in a warm bed. The only reason to get up this early was to go fishing or hunting, things that were actually enjoyable. But he had no choice. Dreya's life was in danger. He read the note again. Dandrel's Pool, sunrise. He knew what it meant. She had gone to ask the pool goddess about the curse. His father, King Torin, said that there was no curse, but Dreya rarely paid attention to him. She was sure that there was a curse, and she had gone up there to get help from the most dangerous pool goddess in the kingdom. Footsteps sounded on the stairs. The night guard was early. Prince Bryan squeezed behind the suit of armor by his father's door. He was surprised at how little room there was. He had hidden there 100 times as a child, but now He was much too big. As he tried to crouch behind the armor, he bumped one of the metal arms, and the armor started to topple. He threw his arms around the iron suit and pulled it back into place. The footsteps reached the landing. Prince Bryan froze, hugging his father's armor, bumping the guard, hoping the guard would go up to the next floor. The steps started toward him. He slid down to the floor, behind the armor, and ducked his head. What am I afraid of, he thought. He's a night guard. I'm the crown prince of Partrain. I can go wherever I want. He knew perfectly well what he was afraid of. His father would ask him why the future king of Partrain was hiding in the shadows like a rat, and he would have no answer. If he mentioned Dreya's note, his father would explode. He checked to make sure the note hadn't fallen out of his pocket. I should have burned it, he thought. But it wasn't the night guard. They were walking too slowly and seemed to be slinking along the wall. An assassin? Prince Bryan eased his dagger out and put one hand against the armor so he could push it over on the intruder. Then he saw the shoes. They were nothing but rags wrapped around dirty feet. It was Tobin, the blind beggar, one of his father's spies, dragging his hand along the wall. When his arm touched the armor, he stopped. Prince Bryan held his breath. Tobin mumbled something, then walked around the armor to the king's door and knocked. Name, called King Torin. Tobin, your highness. The door opened, but only a crack. Speak, the king said. It's about Eridas, Tobin said, the High Davina. I know who Eridas is, snapped the king. What about her? She's discovered something about the curse. What has she discovered? I don't know, your highness. I overheard the kitchen staff. You don't know? Come back when you know something. The door slammed. I just realized, could you hear me before I moved over like this? Yeah, you could hear me all the time. Okay.
Yeah.
Because when I went like this, I was getting echoes off the wall over there. Tobin turned, felt for the armor, and stopped. He reached out toward Prince Bryan. People said that Tobin could see more with his other senses than most people could see with their eyes. They also said that Tobin wasn't blind at all. The old man's hand landed lightly on the armor's right arm. He pushed it back into place, moving it less than a finger's width, then walked back toward the stairs, his long nails making a scratching noise on the wall. Prince Bryan edged out of his hiding place, tiptoed past his father's door, and started to run. He raced to the servants' stairs, shot down to the first floor, through the kitchen, and out into the cool night air of the royal gardens. Our hero escapes, he sang out as he sprinted past the first hedge out of earshot of the castle. But, he added in a dramatic voice, will he get there in time to save the damsel? He laughed at the thought of Dreya being a damsel in distress. Her totem was the cave lion, and it fit her. She was fearless. The tattoo on her ankle was a cave lion with its jaws wide, ready to pounce. Prince Bryan's totem was a gray wolf. His father said it was a sly and ruthless killer. Prince Bryan thought it looked like a scrawny dog. Even if kings were allowed to have tattoos, he would not want a gray wolf slinking about anywhere on his body. The moon was about down. He had taken far too long to get through the castle. He wished Dreya had talked to him before going up to Dandrill's pool, though it just would have led to an argument. King Torin swore that the curse was a story made up by Eridas to help her and the Eternal Order gain power over the throne. Eridas said that she had received a revelation. Archon, the source of all evil, when the writing is really good, bells sound, was preparing a curse that would plunge the entire Fourth Era into endless war. Prince Bryan believed his father. Dreya believed her mother. Eridas was her mother. The throne and the eternal order had been locked in a bitter power struggle for generations. Prince Bryan and Dreya, on the other hand, were best friends. He ran down the long gravel path that's curved toward the herb garden. The smell of basil and rosemary made his mouth water. Just past the roses and the heather, at the foot of the gardens, he came to the statue of the four greatest kings of Partrain. He dropped to one knee in front of the last one, a tall, broad-shouldered man with a brow so thick it nearly covered his eyes. It was his father, King Torin IV, mounted on Tremaine, the great warhorse. King Torin the Brave, I salute you, Prince Bryan said solemnly. He reached into the tall grass behind Tremaine's feet, and thanks, he said, for hiding my boots. He pulled the boots out and hurriedly put them on. As he set out for the forest wall, he took one look back at his father's stern face. People told Prince Bryan that he looked like his father, with the same straight nose and long jaw, but he couldn't see it. His eyes weren't as fierce, and his shoulders weren't so broad. He was tall for his age, fast with a sword, and good with a bow, but he wasn't heroic. At my age, he thought, father was already a war hero. I've never even seen a battle. At the orchards, Prince Bryan glanced back at Castle Bristow to see if anyone was following him. His father had spies everywhere, but he saw no one. The night sky was growing light as dawn approached. He could make out the sea of rooftops spilling down from the castle to the city walls. As soon as the sun rose, the Gate of Lions would open and farmers would pour into the city to sell their goods. Bristow, the center of Partrain, the most glorious of the many kingdoms, would come to life. Someday, he thought, I will be its king. The thought made him nervous. From the orchards, he could see the royal forest, an endless carpet of green, stretching up to distant Mount Cairn. It was his favorite place in all of Partrain. He raced toward the forest wall, an ancient stone barrier as tall as two men, built before the beginning of the Third Era. Morning, Kipper, called Jenkins the gate guard as the prince approached. Morning, Jenkins, Prince Bryan said. People called him Kipper when his father wasn't around. King Torin knew about it, and he didn't like it, but he had only mentioned it once. You will be king, he said. If people call you Kipper, will they follow you into battle? Will they live and die for you? Prince Bryan knew his father was right, but he didn't mind being called Kipper. It meant people liked him. Why did a king have to be feared by his people? Did Dreya come through? A while ago, Jenkins said. I warned her about being out at night, what with the curse and all. She just told me not to tell King Torin. Prince Bryan hurried through the gates, wishing people would stop talking about the curse. He entered the forest and breathed in the sharp scent of the pines. He could hear Proctor's Creek plunging into the canyon just past the first stand of trees. To his left were meadows of purple and golden wildflowers. The forest had enough deer, fish, and berries to live on for the rest of your life. If I didn't have to be king, he thought, I would live here. When he reached the Cairn River, instead of crossing the stone bridge, he turned to the right onto a narrow deer trail that ran along the bank. It was overgrown and he had to push through the hawthorn bushes, but he knew it would save time. When the old trail finally left the river and headed toward Elven Ravine, it opened up and Prince Bryan began to run again. He went over the note in his mind. It had no details, just to be there at dawn. It was already dawn. He pictured Dreya at the bottom of Dandrill's pool and raced up the steep rise to Evan's Crest. At the crest, he turned off the trail and sprinted across Blackthorn Meadow to the top of the ravine. He edged out onto a rock ledge and peered down. It was dawn, but down at the pool, it was still as dark as night. It gave him hope. When his eyes adjusted, he could just make out the pool at the bottom. Something was floating in the middle of the water. He leaned out as far as he could. It looked like a white circle. He shaded his eyes from the pale light of the morning sky. It was a circle of cloth with something in the middle. It was Dreya. She was motionless, still as death, staring skyward with her slip spreading out around her like a halo. Prince Bryan jumped from the ledge, crashed through a blackthorn bush, and tumbled head over heels down the steep ravine. He slid to a stop, staggered to his feet, and limped to the edge of the water, shouting Dreya's name. She didn't move. He was about to leap in, but stopped when he noticed her clothes folded neatly beside the pool. She wasn't dragged in, he thought. Maybe she's put herself in a trance to talk to the pool goddess. Or maybe the pool goddess put her in a trance and she's freezing to death in front of me. A pale light appeared in the water. It grew until a green face emerged. Long wrinkles ran from her eyes down her green cheeks. Her dark lips were bloated and cracked, revealing lines of pink flesh. She glared at Prince Bryan with eyes as pale as moonlit clouds. He reached slowly for his dagger. The goddess snarled, pulling back her lips, and two tusk-like teeth slid out from her upper jaw as she opened her mouth. She let out a rattling noise, like stones grinding together, and then grabbed Dreya's wrist and pulled her down. Prince Bryan didn't hesitate. He dove after them, kicking down through the ice-cold water. Somewhere in his mind, he knew that he could not outswim a goddess, and she would probably kill them both. But all that mattered was Dreya. He pulled down through the darkness until he felt Dreya's slip trailing out behind her. He grabbed it, then caught hold of her ankle. He tried to turn and head for the surface, but the goddess was too strong, pulling them both down deeper into the cold pool. His lungs ached for air. If he held on any longer, he'd be too deep to make it back to the surface. He held on. Oh, the chapter goes on and on and on. That's the first adventure. But there you know the two of them and their relationships with their parents, or you know the father much more than their mother, Eric, and the world they live in. That's the world that the whole story takes place in. So, the questions are...
Wow. Cliffhanger.
Wow. Am I stuck here? This one?
And we don't need to push on any questions forward. It's sort of a freestanding event. We can immediately go back for more wine.
I got
Joe.
Yeah, and can you talk about, so when we were kids and we were in the car, you know, the stories were Prince Karl Ostrowski, so
Yeah.
just for like humor the kids that were in the car, can you just talk a little bit about the evolution of some of the characters and...
Yeah, it started out with Bruce's weekend daycare when the World Series was going on. The Red Sox and the Reds.
And the Cincinnati Reds.
Cincinnati Reds and
The Red
Boston.
Sox. Yeah.
Big time World Series. It was going to be on the day, so he said, "Can you make up a story that would lead up to a game played between two teams, and then the kids would watch the game as if it were part of the story?"
Because we wanted to watch the game.
Yeah, we wanted to watch the game.
So we had all these kids.
Yeah. Well, the game rained out. I did start the story though, and the hero
It rained down.
was Prince Karl Ostrowski, who was, did he play for Boston?
Yeah, he was the left fielder.
Okay.
He's the star of the team.
So for years, this was Prince Karl. That's why initially I started out, I said Prince Karl. It was, So yeah, so that was the start, and then I worked it into, I would start the carpools by saying, you wanna hear a story from the past or a story from the future? Quite often, and as this story grew, it became the past, and so I started linking, I mean, there would be an adventure, and then I'd go to the next adventure. The drives were all 40 minutes long or so, or an hour, we'd get to the city or Sacramento or something. So that was the length of the stories, and then years later I started to put them into a cohesive novel, and I changed poor old Carl's, and the evil Peter Rose.
Peter
Evil
Rose.
Peter Rose. And this is before his fall from grace. I didn't like that guy anyway. So yeah, the evil Peter Rose became the evil Père Rosé, because I didn't want to be sued. And I thought Carlos Grimsky wouldn't sue me, because he was a hero. And there was a friend, Dreya didn't exist, was Gastronite, and I think it was Hutch, in an early draft said, what kind of name is that? Gastronite, how do you pronounce that? That's an ugly name, or he didn't say that, but I got the picture. So I there were always two wizards, a good wizard and a bad wizard. Père Rosé became the good wizard, Gastronite became the bad wizard. So anyway, those changes like that. But that's basically the first half of the book. The adventures are the adventures that just came out of my mouth during those drives on the story from the past requests. Is that how's that?
That was great.
Okay. Yeah, Bruce.
Well, when I read that part about, I read a draft. I think you sent me a draft to kind of look at, and I kind of went that Brian, the Prince Bryan, would go in, and he's in this pool, and underwater, and that he's grabbing her foot, as I recall, and so like, why did he keep holding on when he knew it was like that it was almost like certain death, because he knew he was getting past the point of no return, and he didn't know that there. I mean, I know where it goes, that he comes to air, but I was just sort of astonished by that, and I just thought, seeing as you just read it, and that was the point where I kind of went, why did he do that? So, you got anything on that?
Well, yeah, and that was Alan coming in, Alan C. Jones, award-winning author. I had him get to the bottom of the pool pretty quickly, and Alan said, no, you need to earn it. You need to have things happen on the way down that isn't just, he's trying hard. There has to be specific events, and those specific events must have a hierarchy of risk that you're going through. He says you have to bury it in the story. You can't just say, oh my God, it was very brave of him to do. No, you have to make a story and put what you want the reader to feel in the story. So he's reaching and grabbing and doing all this stuff. But the stuff they get down to an underwater cave, by the way, and then the good adventure comes. Let me go back to the names. I forgot. It was Prince Carl. Prince Carl's a perfectly nice name. We all know Carl ourselves. At a certain point, Alan, I think, suggested, why don't you name the characters after your kids? I said, I'll ask them. So I asked Brian and Audrey, and Brian became Prince Bryan with a Y. I tried to get some a little slight variation there. Couldn't find anything. And there was now a female, his best friend was now a girl, totally after the carpooling business, named Mel. And I fell in love with Mel. Mel was great. And so I just changed Mel over to Dreya, which would be Dreya. Yes, the one with her hand up in the air. Okay, yeah, well, wait a minute. Anything else?
What about the two thieves? The ones that
Yes.
the chalice. They keep on appearing and doing nasty things, and then finally the
Yes.
chalice. Well, I should.
You know, this is a question for those of you who have read.
Or you read the book.
Yes. This is just literature. You know Chekhov's shotgun. Chekhov said, if you open a door in Act 1 and there's a shotgun laying in there, by the last act, you better use the shotgun. This goddess, the Ender's Pool, they go back at the end. Everything recurs again. They get back to everything. The first adventure they have on the quest is they run into these two thieves. These two thieves recur again and eventually start an entire war. Just being thieves. They're two dumb thieves. I mean, it's like they're almost comical, except things keep happening around them which ruin everything. So that's what, yes, the Jack and Spets. One's real mean, one's real dumb, and things happen. Bad things happen. Yo.
What became of the future stories?
I actually have I have a binder, and it's 150 pages long probably of single space of those stories. I put those stories together. I no longer have the file that printed out that binder. I have the binder, and it's I don't know whether I'll ever touch it again because I have two other things in mind. The second one being written jointly by Sandra Lee and myself. This one I don't know. It was sort of fun. It was funny, and there was one cute little character girl, or no, it wasn't a girl. Name of Delphin. Never could tell whether it was a boy or a girl. I purposely created her with no pronouns. And this is long before people questioned pronouns. It became something that's on your signature or on your emails. And it was fun. Oh, it was fun. But I don't know that it would hold up. I don't know. And I don't know that I'll get to it. This could easily be the only book I ever write. But I do. I have one serious memoir of the 60s. A shire, what do you call it? A epitaph for the 60s, for the spirit of the 60s. And the other one, Sandra Lee and I are going to write a Grand Canyon mystery. It'll be great. Sell off. It'll sell like. Yes.
I was wondering, when you got in the car and the kids were in the car, did you already have an idea of a story, or did it just flow out of you? It just came.
I just start talking. Yeah.
Wow.
And I don't know why. It clearly worked. I would have stopped if it didn't work.
Sure.
But I could make it come to an end, and I don't know why. I mean, it wasn't something I learned in creative writing classes. I don't know. I was just talking. I like to talk. Barbara.
Did your family tell stories when you were growing up?
It's curious. I hadn't spent a lot of time thinking about this. My father did. My middle brother and I would jump into bed with him and my mom, and we'd say, "Tell us a Wolfie story," which was what he called stories of his childhood in South Dakota. And they're all true stuff. I mean, it was events. It was anecdotes that happened. We loved it. We loved it. So that qualifies, you know. I could go and set up camp at the table and sign things, or people actually could go home. That's okay too. Okay, good. Oh, yes.
I remember a while back you were going to do something called Our Town about Eldridge.
Yes, I did.
You did?
Oh, I did. It's about 3-4 pages long.
Okay.
And it was a tone poem. It was more of a poem. There was a filmmaker at Sonoma State Hospital at the time who turned it into a film. And it was published a couple times in various things around Sonoma State Hospital. It was kind of cute. Or cool. That word was supposed to be cool. 3 pages. Yeah.
And like a website, you look that up. I did an illustration for it. But
Yes, that's right. There's 2 organizations that are made up of old employees from Sonoma State Hospital, Sonoma Developmental Center. I doubt if they have archives. I think it's more like a chat room thing, so they can keep up with each other. I don't know. I just only recently joined it. 'Cause I said, I don't want to talk to those people.
Well,
No.
it might be fun to follow up on that if we do, achievement here.
Yeah,
People start to look for other stuff.
or else it falls into too many things to do. Okay, thank you very much. I'm very.